I mean, it really is evil. I mean, every society throughout human history has known that you have to protect the innocence of children. Every society. And now we are all of a sudden, very quickly in our society, okay with removing the innocence of children. I mean, that goes back to the books. For me, it goes back to what you're seeing at the strip clubs. With all these, you're normalizing pedophilia.
Let's talk about the book thing. So, we've seen all this stuff. We have a story here from Fox News. Texas lawmaker planning bill to ban children from drag shows. Not appropriate at all. A lot of this is in a similar vein, where for some reason there's a big push from the left to expose children to overtly sexualized activities or overtly sexual activity. You had a lawsuit. Was it just one, or were there two?
So it's combined into two. There's two different books that are in this lawsuit.
But you basically, you didn't get them banned.
No.
Parental consent is now required to display sexual content.
That's what we're seeking. Yeah. So in Virginia, you're able to take a book before a judge. It's a law that you're able to take a book before a judge and see if it's obscene. So you get a ruling on it. Mm-hmm. The judge agreed with us. My attorney delegate Tim Anderson and I decided to take these books. There's two of them. It's the Genderqueer, again the most controversial book in the country, and then Court of Mist and Fury. And we took them before a judge, and she ruled. The interesting thing is every single judge in Virginia Beach recused themselves.
Wow.
Said it's a political nightmare. They don't want to do it.
I'm sorry, guys. I talk about Civil War conflict. We have a guy who just got arrested for attempted murder of a justice. Yep. And I say, I don't think there's a way out of this. When the judges are like, I'm scared and too cowardly to stand up for values, then the only thing I can see is weak men will lead to hard times.
Oh, absolutely. Always. I mean, that's what we're seeing right now, quite honestly. I mean, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle are, and you've had some weak politicians for a long time.
This book, Genderqueer, has writing. Some of the writing in it is overtly sexualized, saying, I want your in my... And then you have a photograph of two people performing acts on each other.
Yep.
There's actually two different images of activities being performed on each other, adult activities. This other book, what was it called?
Court of Mist and Fury.
So what? I've not heard this one, though. So what's this
So it's
book?
actually, it's one of a series. It's a 3-part series, and it's actually heterosexual in nature, but the descriptions of the act of sex is so descriptive. I mean, they can't read. So the local news channel there, FM 99, wasn't even allowed to read it on the air.
Was it an FCC violation?
Yep, absolutely. And the lady that was presenting it, she's
kids,
great.
Huh?
She was like, well, I can't read this. And so the other DJ was like, well, I'll read it. And looked at it and goes, I can't read this on there.
Wow.
Yep.
But it's okay for 6th graders to have it, 10 to 12 years old. It's okay to give it to our children.
And what are they writing? These establishment leftists and liberals are writing. Republicans are banning books.
I'm a Nazi now. I'm a book banner.
If you believe that, you're in a cult. I'm sorry. Like, we don't allow Playboy in schools, and Playboy isn't like hardcore stuff.
Right.
It's pinup models, nude women, but that's not allowed.
Well, there's got to be a line. That's my point. Is there has to be a line. You clearly, for Virginia Beach anyway, that school district obviously doesn't have a clear enough line. And I don't know who it is, where the failure is, where the breakdown is in administrative and the administrative level. But whoever it is doesn't have a clear line. So I'm simply asking for parental rights to be restored. So parental consent for minors to view sexually explicit material, just like when you go to a movie theater.
I think one of the issues is that the whole identity of Democrats is we hate Republicans.
Sure.
It started partly with Trump. I think it existed a little bit before. But they said Republicans are all bad. Trump wins. Trump is a Nazi. And now they have no choice but to stake their identity on opposing whatever it is that's right wing.
Especially if you call yourself a conservative Republican.
Oh, I mean, you guys are conservative Republicans are just off the cliff. You're so
crazy.
far right.
Yeah.
But Joe Rogan, he's a borderline socialist.
Yes.
And they call him right wing because they have every part of their identity must be in opposition to whatever it is. Maybe the good news is there won't be a major conflict between factions because they will ostracize themselves to the point where there's 10 people who hold their views.
One can only hope, right? But honestly, so I actually believe, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Honestly, I think this is a step in the right direction.
Just complaining on the internet.
No, it's good. But this is where news is now. News is no longer, Fox News or CNN or MSNBC. Everybody looks at that and realizes it's propaganda. I had a Chinese friend who told me, he said, we don't watch the news in China because we know it's propaganda. For some reason, you Americans haven't figured it out yet.
Well, I heard that even Fox News was pro-gun control.
They're all pro-gun control.
Yeah. I think someone mentioned in the Super Chats that on the 5, they were in favor of red flag laws.
Nope. Not me.
Right. Anybody who pays attention knows red flag laws just mean a violation of your Fourth Amendment rights.
Right.
That's it.
Well, at one time in the VA, they wanted to be able to strip you of your gun rights if they thought you had PTSD, right? So I don't trust anybody to be able to tell somebody else what their mental capacity is. I mean, we do that before a judge,
right,
but not some doctor. We have no idea what these doctors are doing. I think it's a very dangerous road to go down. For me, and when I say that, certainly run for office, people automatically want to go, oh, well, what about the kids and everything else that's happening? It's a tragedy. These tragedies are horrible. And, I think all Americans, our heart breaks when we see this loss of innocent life, especially so young.
They don't care about kids.
They don't care. No, they don't care at all.
There's a great meme. I love it. It said, it was the Drake meme, the one where he's putting the hand up and he's like, no. And the one where he's like, yes. And it says school shootings. And he's like, ooh. And then it says school bombings. And he's like, oh.
Right.
Under Obama and Vice President Biden, we had kids being blown up. They don't care.
Right.
What they care about is they've got a wedge issue because things like this happen all the time. Now they're like, look at the mass shootings in Chicago and Minnesota. I'm like, you never care about this stuff.
Nope.
They need a wedge issue for the midterms, and so they're acting like they care about kids. But I'll throw it back to what's going on with these kids in Texas. You got a rep in Texas and a rep in Florida want to make drag shows illegal with minors present. The funny thing is, it already is. I don't understand how, but the cops won't do anything.
Right.
These are adult men in sexualized outfits, doing sexualized dances, with a big neon sign reading "It's not going to lick itself," and the kids are handing them money for them to dance. Right there, I'm like, okay, that's clearly over the line.
Right.
Then you had Desmond is Amazing, little boy dancing on stage, stripping his clothes off as adult gay men are handing him money.
Yep.
And then you have another kid who's called Queen Lactatia, who was posing with a 99% nude man. It's a man who's basically nude, but a tiny little fabric on his junk. And the little boy's touching his arm and smiling for the camera. They're outright targeting and abusing kids.
It's
and
crazy.
Then they're acting like they care about them and no one else does.
It's funny because when I talk to people now, I tell them, look, we hear the word conservative a lot, but nobody defines why. Why am I conservative? And I tell people all the time, look, I'm a conservative because I believe there's a transcendent moral code. There's a right and a wrong, and there's a good and an evil. And I just have seen evil sweep across this nation for far too long unchecked. And this is what we're seeing. This is the culmination of it. That's truly evil, what you're seeing with these kids. And anybody who thinks otherwise, I think you're just sick, honestly.
Have you seen the documentary, What is a Woman? The Daily
I have
Wire
not
one?
seen it. I've seen parts of it and seen the whole thing in entirety.
It is really good.
It's great.
The Daily Wire just put out some clips of, they did an audience screening. What do they call it? What do they call it? There's I can't think of the phrase.
Focus group?
Focus group.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you. And it was fascinating to see the shock in regular people's faces when they were watching this stuff. But there was like one woman, she was like, there's more than two genders. And the entire room goes, what? Like, what are you talking about? I think what's happening is you've got a lot of people who have their whole identity is based on opposing whatever the right is. And they live in a media bubble.
Right.
Like you mentioned, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News. So they hear these things and they just say, okay. They think they're the norm. They think they're normal, but they're weird outliers that represent like 8% of the population.
And it's not just a media bubble. It's a social media bubble with the algorithms regurgitating of political views, amplifying them where people only hear each other. And then the main kind of disagreement that they may have online is that someone isn't fighting the other side too hard or is too sympathetic to the other side. And when you have that kind of environment, you're going to, of course, reap a lot of social chaos. And I think a lot of this is being done deliberately because just even a few years ago, I remember doing independent media almost 15 years ago, and it wasn't like this. This political divide wasn't like this. There was a lot more people in the middle. There was a lot more moderates. There was a lot more people that were able to see common ground between the left and the right. It wasn't as hyperbolic, as insane, as crazy as it is now, where you literally have people arguing for the abuse of children. I mean, it's just so mind-boggling to see. So,
and it was not that long ago.
Yeah, it was not that long ago. I remember it, and I remember even two and a half years ago, the first time I came on this show, the first thing I said, we need a peaceful divorce. And the conversation, when I brought it up, wasn't even taken seriously. It was like, yeah, whatever. But I was like, no, seriously, we need a peaceful divorce because there is no other way to avoid this larger clash that the ruling elites are kind of building up so we fight each other. We need to stop this immediately. We're going into very dangerous territory, and all the ingredients, all the fuel is being added to this fire, and it's getting out of control.
I think one way you can do that, though, and I think Roe v. Wade is a perfect example, is you start decentralizing the federal government, reducing federal government, pushing that power right down to the states. People get 50 options. They're going to start migrating to whatever area they actually identify with.
Decentralize.
But that is just geographic polarization.
Sure.
What happens if Roe and Casey are overturned? Republicans win a majority, they win the White House, and then do a federal ban on abortion.
I think it's going to be
That could
like
be a problem.
So here's what I'll say to both of you guys. Reading the history of the Civil War, what did we see? The first thing that happened was a peaceful divorce.
Sure.
Before Abraham Lincoln was inaugurated, 7 states said, we hereby secede. And that was it. Months went by with nothing. They were like, that's it, we're done. And then Abraham Lincoln gets in and he goes, I don't recognize that as being legitimate. Fort Sumter in South Carolina, he's got occupying forces, and the states all of them are basically like, dude, you can't be here.
Right.
The fight breaks out, and even after the Battle of Fort Sumter, I think it was Lee, I'm not sure. They didn't know if it was actually the start of a civil war or just some small skirmish, and that would be the end of it.
Sure.
But because of the actions by the federal government, several other states were like, yo, this is crazy. Right. What are you doing? And they backed out, ended up joining the Confederacy. West Virginia, Virginia splits into 2 different states. So the other issue is, when it comes to the geographic hyperpolarization, as you described it, Tommy, the South was angry because laws were passed, the Fugitive Slave Act,
right,
that if slaves escaped to the North had to return them. That was federal law.
But then they didn't.
The North said no.
Right.
Now, here's the issue. I think the North was right not to do it.
Sure.
I think slavery was completely wrong and amoral and needed to be ended. Yeah. Many in the North were willing to fight that fight. But because of this, Southern states said, if the law will not be respected, there is no agreement between us and you, we leave. And that's what precipitated the secession.
Sure.
Which ultimately leads to a fight over weapons, which leads to a fight. So I fear, I said this last year, if Roe v. Wade and Roe and Casey are overturned, the Republicans then campaign on banning abortion federally. Many think they won't because Republicans are more states' rights. But let's say they do. They win in November. We're 5 months out, but they can't get past a filibuster and they won't be able to get past veto.
Sure.
Then Donald Trump campaigns and says, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sign the bill. It's the Save the Children Act. And then he does.
Right.
Then you get a Supreme Court that is conservative. You get Congress and the Senate and the executive branch. The bill hits Trump's desks. Day one, he signs it. Then you get blue states, California, Illinois, New York, who refuse to shut down abortion clinics. What happens then? Will Trump send in federal authorities to do it? Will you then get states saying, we will not recognize federal law enforcement? Will it result in conflict over these clinics? I'd be willing to bet Antifa and other left-wing groups would show up and fight with federal authorities at abortion clinics. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm not saying it's likely to happen.
I think that's the most extreme case, obviously. But if you took that power and you push it back down to the states, where I think it belongs, I think our forefathers would say that kind of power belongs to the state, not the federal level. The federal level, look, the federal government has just become this all-consuming beast that thinks that, and people, the vast majority of Americans go, well, let's just let the government legislate. Why? They've done a very poor job of it. Why are we going to trust that? We push that power back down as low as possible to the states or local localities, and that's where we had the most say. That's always what I'm an advocate for.
I do agree. I think it may be the only option we have. So I was asked by this progressive what I thought about Roe v. Wade, and I'm like, I'm pro-choice. But I think at this point, the best thing we can do is let states be states. And conservatives can go to red states, and then blue states can go to blue people can go to blue states or whatever.
My answer is the same, except I'm pro-life, and I think it should be down to the states. I just tell people, look, I believe that life begins at conception, so I would always, seek to push the needle in that direction. However, I think it's a state rights issue. I don't think it's a federal issue. I really don't. And I've had people go, "Oh, you're passing the buck." I'm like, I'm not passing the buck. I'm giving you 50 options. I think it's the safest. It's the nicest thing to do, most compassionate thing that we do to people. Give them 50 options.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is just decentralization.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
And I think the more we allow individuals to make the right decisions for themselves, the more we win. Whenever we have a big bureaucratic government, we have a government that, of course, rules for the many and makes many mistakes.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what we have right now. We have way too much money invested in it. We have way too much policies. We have way too many decisions being made by this bureaucratic Becky Force that doesn't give a damn about the average person and is serving the needs of the special ruling class and helping them out.
The problem is the ruling class, too. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we're supposed to be a constitutional republic. Instead, we've become this. You got this weird oligarchy going on.
Technocratic corporocracy run by bankers and shadowy elites.
A lot of C's, but yeah.
Yes.
But you know what it feels like? It feels like wealth only lasts a few generations. They say 3 generations, and it feels like the ruling elites, the politicians, the wealthy kids, they're not good at running these institutions and organizations. No. So you look at everything and you're like, why does it feel like these things are falling apart? It's like, we used to have oligarchs and ruling elites and barons. Right. Their great grandkids have no idea how to run this stuff, and it's all just collapsing around them.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, but it's a problem when you have these congressmen and congresswomen going into Congress not worth anything, and then 4 years later worth $10 million. That's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, where'd you get that from? I know what your budget was. I know what your salary was. And there's no way, even if you didn't spend a single penny.
I guess people are saying you got to invest where Nancy Pelosi invests because she knows something.
Hey, I said, you know how to be the most favorite congressman in all of the nation. Every single week, just say, hey, these are my investment opportunities.
Yeah. We got a bunch of bills on our desk. Here's how they're going to vote on them. Here's what I'm investing.
You're going to say that. Hey, this is what I'm investing in.
Yeah, there was entire TikTok channels just built on what Nancy Pelosi was trading crazy. In the stock market that got censored and deleted and taken down.
Well, listen, it's criminal. You know, I mean,
absolutely.
Martha Stewart went to jail for it. Come on, you know. I mean, if Martha Stewart can go to jail for it, what are we doing here? But we do have to. I think we just have to elect the right people. I really do.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.